You don't want to open up today's episode?
No.
No?
You can start.
You sure?
Since I have a lot to talk about, you can start.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I just want to say welcome back, guys, to Hoy No Mas podcast, another episode. I was supposed to have a guest 2 days ago and yesterday, actually, but the same guest canceled out. However, we have another very special guest, a recurring guest now, Chelo, my girlfriend. Chelo, how do you feel being back?
I feel weird because I'm like never here. I mean, I was here last time, but like not back to back.
Yeah. So, all right, Chelo.
Special.
By the way, I just want to say thank you to all the people that watched the last episode with Chelo. We weren't even expecting that much love and views right on TikTok. For us, at least, that's been the most viewed reel or TikTok post that we've done. So we weren't expecting that at all, and I just feel so fortunate that it has to be that first TikTok that took off for us. It has to do with our journey, right? About the baby and you having the miscarriage of our baby, right? It's I don't know. I mean, everything happens for a reason, right? But yeah, super thankful. All the comments, just about all the comments, were very, very beautiful. Chelo took the time to write almost everybody back, right?
Yeah, I literally took like a break because I was replying to comments for over an hour, and that was just the TikTok comments. That's not including the YouTube and my DMs and everything else.
Right. So, yeah, we just want to say thank you. And Chelo, how come start off the podcast? By the way, Chelo she actually named the podcast. When I was looking for the name to the channel, I had different names, whatnot. And Chelo, why is it that he chose Hoy No Mas, or you mentioned Hoy No Mas?
I mentioned Hoy No Mas because Angel kept stressing about a name for the podcast, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if we should name it this or that," and he gave me like different names, but it sounded too serious, and I was like, "No, that's not you, little clown." But I don't know, like one of his words is like Hoy No Mas, and like, I mean, there's other words, but that's one of his words. So one day, like, we were just messing around, and he kept saying Hoy No Mas, Hoy No Mas. And that's when it just clicked out of nowhere. And I said, why don't you just call the podcast Hoy No Mas? Because that's you. Like, that represents you. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then, like, I guess you thought about it. And then that's why you named it Hoy No Mas.
All right, so let's get started.
Are you ready? Welcome to Hoy No Mas podcast with Angel Houseman. Check it out.
All right, so Chelo, you received a lot of comments, a lot of messages. They were all beautiful. Now that we had some time to go back and rewatch the podcast and those messages, comments that you received, is there anything in particular that you feel like we didn't touch on? Maybe the process or just anything that you're like, you know what, I should have mentioned this before we go into
part two.
Yeah, part two. Anything?
So there was a couple questions, and one of the questions was, what made me do ayahuasca the second time, which I feel like I should answer that later on because that leads to the why, and like to start the conversation for the second part. And another question that I got asked a lot was, where did we do it? I feel like the where and who was the most popular question that I got because everybody was like, "Oh, where did you go do it?" Da 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 da.
And with that, I mean, it's here local in San Diego, right? And we obviously did it with the shaman that he goes to Peru. He goes and practices in different locations aside from San Diego, but he actually does it here locally. That's where we went. We're not going to put all his information out there, but for the people that are interested and really want to give it a try, feel free to either reach out to me or Chelo, and we'll get you guys in contact. We just don't want to put everything out there, all his information out there, obviously, right? But for those that really are willing and wanting to try it, feel free to contact us.
Serious inquiries only.
Yeah. All right, Chelo. So anything else? Because, yeah, you're right. I think that was probably the number one question.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
saw over and over.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else before we actually jump?
I think the other one was they asked if I went to the hospital when all of this happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What does that mean?
No, I guess like to see if I got taken care of or whatnot.
Taken care of?
Yeah, like go and get checked by the doctors and all
Oh,
that.
okay. Before doing ayahuasca?
No, not like when I had the actual miscarriage.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, talk to me about that because you went to the doctors and that's when they told you, right? That you had the miscarriage?
Yeah, so okay, let's start off by there. I guess we can start off this podcast by there. So when the miscarriage happened around that time, I was taking care of this older lady that I used to do. I used to take care of her and whatnot. And I remember that at that time, this lady couldn't really walk, and I was basically like her baston. Like she would rely on me for me to like carry, like not carry her, but she would like hold on to me for her to get up and down from the chair and do all these kinds of things. So keep in mind at this point, like I was working being a caregiver, but I didn't even know I was pregnant. So I was doing all this like these things that I don't even know if I should have been doing them without even knowing. And I remember the day that it all happened. It was like I think it was a Sunday, and I was gonna go to work, and it was really early in the morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning, way even before I would get out of bed to go to work. And I woke up and I had this really like strong cramp in my stomach, and I freaked out, but I went to the bathroom. I didn't see anything, and I was like, okay, whatever, it's just a cramp, and whatever, I'm just gonna go ahead with my day. Because before that, I would always be getting cramps, but I would just disregard it. So I got ready, I went to work, and everything was going normal. It was me and the lady alone at her house, and I remember like she took a shower. I helped her get a shower, and she got out and she was doing her thing, and I was sitting down in a chair like this, and all of a sudden I started cramping so bad to the point that I couldn't even if I would have wanted to get up from the chair, I wouldn't have been able to, because that's how bad it was. And I've always had really bad cramps, so it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like it's so bad. But I did start freaking out because I was like, okay, like at this point I already knew I was pregnant, so I was freaking out because I instantly knew that was not normal to cramp that bad. So I went to the bathroom, everything was fine, but I feeling like crap. And I remember that at that point, when I was taking care of this lady, her husband used to leave for the day, for the couple hours that I was with her. So it was me and her by ourselves, and I didn't want to just leave her like that because she would rely on me to take care of her. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if something happens to her? Like, I just didn't want to leave her like that. So I remember like by the third, fourth, almost when my shift was gonna be over, I kept cramping so bad, and I went to the bathroom again. And the last time that I went to the bathroom, that's when I realized that I was bleeding already. But it was like a full on like TMI, but it was a full on like period bleeding. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's happening. And as much as I wanted to think that it wasn't that, something inside of me felt that it was that. And finally her husband came, I left, and by the time I left, I was texting you because that's when you and my dad were doing the drywall in the room. And I texted Angel, and I was like, oh, this is going on. And I was like, let's go to the ER. So I get here, I'm waiting for Angel in his car, and my dad walks out. Nobody knew I was pregnant other than Angel and my sister. So my dad walks out, and he looks at me, and I knew right from the get-go that he didn't believe what I was going to tell him. And I remember I told him like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment. And he looked at me like, you have a doctor's appointment on a Sunday? Like all random, because they have to cancel everything. And I was like, yeah, I have a doctor's appointment, this and that. And he looked at me, and I knew he knew that I was lying. And he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home. If you need anything, call me. And he went home. And Angel took me to the hospital. We went to the ER. And by this point, like, I was dehydrating. I was like bleeding out a lot. And I get to the ER. It was during COVID, so obviously they were doing everything like the check-in outside. And I remember this nurse checked me in. I was sitting down in a chair, and she was like, oh, we need to take out blood. And I see like these tubes, this para la sangre, and there was like 6 or 8 of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna take out blood. And she poked me like on this arm. This arm got bruised.
It was a guy, no?
Yeah, it was a girl, and then it was a guy, because the girl couldn't figure it out, so that's when they called the male nurse. So the girl poked me everywhere. She couldn't figure it out, so she called a male nurse. And by this point, like, I'm in freaking pain. Like, I just want to get seen. They're taking forever. It's a mess. And then I asked them if Angel could go inside, but since it was freaking COVID, they were like, no, he can't go inside. So I had to go inside by myself. And then the male nurse comes around and he's like, oh, no, we need the blood, y que no sé qué. So I remember he puts the needle in this hand, and my blood was coming out so slow that he started wiggling the freaking needle. And it was a freaking mess. My whole hand started bleeding. It was blood everywhere. And I was just so mad, and I just didn't want to cry. And I was just like looking all mad, and Angel was across from me, and we were like both looking at each other pissed. And they did their thing. So after that, they took me in, and I already knew when I got to the hospital, I already knew that I didn't, like, there was not going to be a baby anymore. So I'm like, they're going to put me on this wheelchair, and there comes this old nurse, and she's like, oh, I need you to do a pee test. And I looked at her, and I was like, I can't do a pee test. And she's like, well, she was a bitch. She was like, you have a bladder. You're going to have to go pee at one point. And I was like, this bitch, like, I did not tell her anything just because of how much I was in pain. But if I wouldn't have been in pain, I would have snapped at her. And she took me into like this room, and then the doctor came, and I told him what was going on. And they took me downstairs to do like the 2 different ultrasounds. But by this point, like I said, like I was already hella bleeding. So like there was nothing already. And when I went back upstairs, all of this happened in a lapse of like 4 or 5 hours. When they took me back upstairs to the room, the doctor came in later, and he was like, oh, we got your results back, but there's nothing in the ultrasound, so there's no more baby. And I remember just giving him a blank stare, and he just kept looking at me, and we were both looking at each other, and I wouldn't say anything. And he's like, did you knew I was gonna tell you this? And I was like, yeah, I like, from the minute I walked in here, I already knew what was gonna happen or what was the outcome. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry, que no sé qué, I'm gonna give you your discharge papers and you're good to go. So they literally came to take off the freaking IV that they messed up in my hand, and they gave me the discharge papers, and they let me go. And they never freaking told me what I had to do for the aftercare. So literally, they just literally were like, okay, here, bye. And then at that point, I was waiting for Angel to pick me up because he couldn't go in there. So when I was going through all of this, I was obviously by myself, and I wasn't really texting Angel. So Angel thought that it was just like, oh, a little bleeding, but everything was fine. And then he found out everything once he got there to pick me up. And I just remember that day we went to get food, and then we came back home. And then I was probably like on a full-on period for like 2-3 weeks, and I feel like I had never felt that crappy before. And then my mom calls me. My mom was blowing up my phone because if you guys don't know, many of you guys don't know, I got brain surgery like a couple years ago. So my parents were tripping out because they thought it was something related to a headache. So my mom calls me, she's blowing up my phone. She's like, what's going on? I know you went to the doctor. Like, I know you're not saying the truth. Y que no sé qué. So I'm just like, dude, like, I'm not trying to deal with you right now. And, you know, finally at night, like, she kept texting me, and I felt bad. So I called her, and then she was like, oh, what's going on? So then I finally told her, and she started crying. I started crying. And she's like, oh, okay, well, just do this, this, and this. So my mom was the one that was telling me, like, don't do this, take care of yourself like this, y esto y el otro. And then I think it was the day after when she brought me, like, this little chicken thing, fluffy, and then the flowers. Animal. Yeah, And
do you still have it?
Yeah, it's in the room. And that's how pretty much that experience went down. So as you guys can imagine, like, it was already, like, I was already feeling like shit because I already knew what the outcome was, and the freaking ER people just made it 10 times worse because they were just all over the freaking place.
Yeah, I remember I was getting mad just because they were like poking you all over the place and they just couldn't get it right, and I was just like, man, I really felt like I wanted to get up and just be like snap, right? But then it was just gonna make everything worse. But yeah, so now going back into that journey, the main reason why I told you to share that story on the previous podcast, like I mentioned, it's part of our journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't mind, Chelo, just what is it, like a month ago, Chelo, or 3 weeks ago? It's
less than a month.
Yeah, or 3 weeks ago, Chelo had just mentioned that she was pregnant again, and I was super excited once again, but I was like, we honestly didn't really tell anybody because I was worried that maybe we were going to have the same situation once again. But I mean, obviously I was excited, right? I was excited because it's like, oh man, hopefully it happens. And unfortunately, the same thing happened again, that Chelo had a miscarriage once again. And that's why I wanted you to share it, right? Because it's just, if we get to the point that we end up having a baby, then at least it's documented of everything that we've gone through to have a baby at one point,
mm-hmm.
right? But man, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. Where I was going with this, it's just, I mean, who knows, right? Maybe at one point, I mean, I do want you to go to the doctors and make sure that everything is fine. We did get checked up and everything was fine, right?
Yeah, we did, because I saw a comment that was like, oh, maybe she has PCOS. But honestly, I don't know. But I've had ovarian cysts for a very long time. But we did both get checked to the doctors, because after that, and you know, before doing ayahuasca the first time, I was really, like I said, I was really like spiraling down, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it me? Is it Angel? Is it this? Is it that? And my head was just going all over the place. And for a while, I really thought it was me, but then I was like, no, because I got pregnant. Like, one other thing would be for me not to be able to get pregnant at all, but I've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, but long story short, we did get checked and they gave us a green light. But I mean, I feel like we can always hear a second opinion.
All right, but you know, yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be the next process for us, just to, you know, maybe get rechecked, make sure everything's fine once again. But something that I was reading through the comments, and a lot of girls that I hear about, like my cousin's wife and things like that, man, a lot of girls go through miscarriages, right? I for some reason I feel like that's a common thing.
It's a thing, and that's what I was saying earlier in my IG stories, that I feel like I didn't realize how many people went through it until I decided to open up about it. And I mean, I'm not gonna say who they are, but I can probably name a couple, like probably 10 people that I know that have gone through it.
Through multiple miscarriages?
Yeah, at least one. But they've all gone through it, and I feel like, honestly, like, it's such a taboo topic that for our culture is like, no, like, maybe what are people gonna say, like this or that or whatever, that girls don't want to talk about it. But once you open up to your close people or to your close circle, like, that's when you realize that there's like a secret society of girls that have gotten through miscarriages. And then they finally open up when you tell them your story, and then you guys are both just sharing your stories, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck, like, you went through that. I would have never imagined you going through that.
Yeah. And you know what gets to me at times, that, you know how people are like, oh, so when are you guys gonna have kids or things like that? And it's just like, man, like, we want to have kids, you know. Like, I feel at this point in my life, I feel at peace. I feel happy. I'm like with a person that I love. I'm at a very, very good stage in my life. So it's just like, man, when? But at the end of the day, it's just up to God, you know. It's up to God when He decides, when God decides when it's going to be our time. Something that at times frustrates me, and this is no offense to anybody, But something that gets to me is just how other people, just people that maybe are not as
Qualified.
yeah, I guess we can use that word, not as qualified or not as in such a good point in their life, they pop babies like nothing, right? Like
Yeah,
it just
one after the other.
yeah,
Different baby daddies.
and for
Everything.
yeah, exactly, like different dads, and it just happens for them like nothing, right? And now, I mean, I don't want to say that over the perfect people we're not, but I feel like we're good people, right? And I mean, for the people that know me, I take very, very good care of Teddy, right? And everybody's like, oh, you take good care of Teddy like if he was your son. For me, Teddy is like my son, right? I feel like that's my first son, but that's why I joke around that at one point, like I want to make sure that Teddy, it's an older brother at one point. But yeah, going back to that, it's crazy how other people out there just pop babies like nothing, and then you have two good people here that are in a good place. They love each other. They have a home, a loving home that they can provide for the baby, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like right now that you're saying that, I feel like for me when I was a kid, I would always see all these people around me because let's be honest, they're probably all family member or like our close people. And I would always see these people and I would always tell myself like, oh my gosh, like I do not want to be like them. And I would always say like, unless I have all of these things, then if I don't have all of these things, then I would rather not have kids. And then I feel like now I literally have all of that and it's like it doesn't happen, but we go back to the same thing que solo Dios sabe cuándo.
Yeah, but you know what? It makes me happy. Everything that you're telling me right now, right? Because it makes me happy that you feel like that you're in a good place in your life, and for me that means a lot because I work a lot. I put in a lot of work. I go to work. I do it here, right? I do other types of social media that I'm trying to like make things pop off, right, for our future. So it makes me happy that you feel in a good place, right? For me, I want you to have the vision that like, fuck, my man is one of the hardest working guys I know, right? And
I do.
yeah, thank you, babe. And the reason why is because I just don't ever want to be that lazy guy that just sits around not doing anything.
The bum.
Yeah, I have a lot of goals and ambitions, and you know what? I'm gonna work hard until everything pops off. At least I know that I gave it my best shot, and it wasn't because I didn't put in the effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So I'm glad we talked about what we went through, right? Our current journey and the reason why you decided to do ayahuasca. Anything else that we haven't touched on before we actually get into the ayahuasca topic?
No, I don't think so. I think we can go into that already.
Okay. So I think we were going into any...
Do you want me to start off how I went in on the second time?
Was there a specific...
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the second time, same thing. I sat down. So the second time, it was not that the first time wasn't special, but the second time my mom went with me to ayahuasca, and that was her second time as well. So we were both together, and it was my mom, myself, another lady, and some other guy. So it was just 4 of us. So the room was pretty much empty. And my mom was like, no te sientes al lado de mí. Like, go over there in a corner. And I was like, all right, pues. So we were like from corner to corner.
Oh, why do you think she said that, if you don't mind me asking?
I feel like because she didn't want probably like to be like checking up on me or like for me to be interrupting her or her to be interrupting me.
Yeah, that's pretty dope, because at times it can take away from the experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so she basically kicked me to the curb. And she was like, no, tú vete a una corner y otro corner. So she was in the first corner. I was in the second corner. And then there was a guy in between us. And then the other lady was on like to the front. So we were all spread out. And I actually laid down in the same spot that I laid down in the first time. And I remember like I took the shot. I didn't feel anything. And the first time when I went in, I felt so much love. And I think that's something that you can confirm, Angel, with your first experience, that you feel like a love that you've never felt before. And it's a love that not even my parents have given me, or like not even like your partner. It's a love that you can't explain. And that's how I felt the first time. So the second time around, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna feel the same way. And I took the shot. I was like waiting for it to hit. It wouldn't hit. I was like, oh my gosh, this is annoying. Like it's not hitting. Maybe I need another shot. And I was just looking around. And I think by this point, like the guy in between my mom and I had already went in. My mom, I couldn't even see her, and the other lady tampoco. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. And I was just like looking all over the place. And I remember that after a while, I don't know how long it took a while. And there was like this, como un tapete enfrente de mí, and it had a heart. And there was another next to the heart that had like a panther or something like that. So I was like looking at it, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm just going to look around. And I was just like looking around, and I looked at the heart, and I kind of saw the outline. The outline of the heart had like cut lines, like a trace line, pero cortada.
And these are things that are being hung on the room, right?
Yes, that's like right in front of me.
Right. Just so people don't think it's a vision, it's actual things that you see in the room.
Yeah, so it's like a un tapete que tiene decoraciones, and it's like on the wall.
Yeah.
So I see the heart, and I kind of see like the outline of it, and it kind of like it lighted up, or lit it up, or whatever.
It lit up.
It lit up, and then se apagó. And I was like, what? And that was the first thing I saw. And then I looked next to it, and I can see the animal. I think, you know what? No, it was a jaguar. I saw the jaguar, and I was like, what the heck? And I could see like a little bit of its skin. And I was like, what the heck? A heart and a jaguar. But I was more drawn to the heart. And I was like, oh, whatever, I'm not seeing anything. And I remember then I looked to my left, and I've always been scared of snakes. And I look to my left, and I see like the outer skin of a snake. Como if it was like a really big snake. I literally saw it like pass next to me, but I saw the body.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a snake next to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm fucking scared of snakes. And I was like, no, you're fine, chillax. So then I go back to the heart, and I'm like looking at the heart. And then I kept hearing like, focus. And then I kept looking at the heart. And the more I looked at it, the more it would brighten up. And then I would get distracted, and I would look at the freaking jaguar. So I was like going back and forth until this voice kept telling me like, focus in one thing and you're going to go in. So then I finally freaking focused on the heart. And that's when I went in immediately. And then that's when I went into full vision, I literally felt that I was a snake. And I remember like I was going like this, and I felt being a snake. And then I kept seeing like that skin on on my sides. Like if the snake was wrapping around me.
Yeah. Before you continue on, I just want to give a little quick side tangent that a lot of people, when they do ayahuasca, they see snakes, they see jaguars, they see a lot of different types of animals from the jungle, right? And if you realize all these types of animals, they have been used by Aztecs, by Mayas. They use all those types of animals in their structures. So I just want you guys to have that mindset that all these medicines like ayahuasca, and there's peyote, there's so many different things, but at least when ayahuasca, I'm a strong believer that ancient civilizations used to tap into these dimensions. That way they could gain knowledge and experience, and that's why they would utilize this medicine and place those animals or artifacts or those designs into their structures.
Yes.
Right?
So then after I feel like that I'm a snake, I remember one of the first things I felt and I saw, it was if I was a little orb or a little circle, and I was like flowing through a tube, and then I got stuck. And then I was stuck there for a while, And I remember like being inside this little bolita, and I was like, oh my gosh, like why are we stuck in here? And we were stuck there for a couple seconds, and then it was like como que si se abrió el camino, and then I just went like, I kept going. And then the next thing I go into is I'm like in this place, it's kind of dark, and there's these beings. Again, these beings are male energy beings, and they're not female, they're not loving, they're like straight up like mamones. And the first thing they told me, they were like, oh, you really came here thinking that you were gonna come into all this lovey-dovey thing like last time? Pues no. And I feel like at that point there were so many things going on at work and whatnot, and I was getting this sense of entitlement that I knew I was getting, but I wanted to stop it, but I didn't know how to stop it. And then like I don't know, I feel like when they were talking to me, they were like straight up, and they were like, oh, you think you're all this? Well, you're not.
Wait, entitlement at work or in your...
Like I just felt like I had a sense of entitlement in general, but especially at work.
Okay.
So when I'm talking to these beings, they're like, oh, you thought that your second journey was going to be like your first journey with with the abuelita energy, but it's not. Like we're going to show you tough love. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember like they were telling me all these things, and they were just like basically like ganging up on me, and I started crying. And then the beings were like, oh no, don't worry, like at the end of the day, like you're here to heal.
So I just feel like they were like, oh, so you're just gonna come in whenever you want, receive what you want, and just leave and come back whenever you want. They're like, hey, no, like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, like tú te crees muy chingona, and you think that you're gonna come in here like, oh, I'm gonna have this experience, but no, like you're gonna have whatever we want to give you.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So I remember they started like making me cry, and at that point I remember I was crying so freaking much that at one point I went like this to my face, y las cara la sentía como seca, like I feel like a skeleton. And I remember at that point I was crying so much, and I was going like this. I didn't feel like I was gonna throw up, but kept going like this. And all of a sudden, I feel like I detached from my body. I felt like I died. And at that point that I detached from my body, I just felt peace. So then I come back and I talk to those beings again. And they're like, well, what do you want to know? And they're like, oh, we can show you whatever you want. But like at that point, I feel like they already made me feel so much like shit. Or they had ganged up on me so much that they were like, oh, we can show you whatever you want to know. But if you think that you've been through enough right now, like, just think about what you want to know, because it can be tougher than that.
How many beings were they that you can remember? Just...
I think there was for sure 2.
Okay, 2. And how is it that they looked?
They looked like they were not the same being from the first time. They just look like a little deformed, pero...
Oh, okay. Just kind of like funny looking?
Yeah, they look funny looking, weird looking.
Yeah, just that way you can have a... Like, last time you said maybe they have an eye on the side and just kind of like deformed, no?
Yeah, they just look deformed.
Okay.
I don't know why, but they do.
Okay.
So they're like, okay, like, what do you want to know? Like, we'll show you whatever you want to know, but be careful lo que quieras saber. So I'm there. And I was like, well, like last time you guys told me that all of these things were going to happen, and nothing has basically happened. Like, what the heck is going on? And because the first time they had kind of given me a timeline of like, oh, this is going to happen around this year, and this is going to happen around this year, like a time frame for me or an age for me. And I feel like at that point, none of that had happened. And I was like, okay, like what the heck, is it going to happen or not? And I remember one of the first things they told me was like, nothing is perfect. Like, you guys always want everything to be like, when I'm 30, I want to have all of these things. When I'm 20 something, I want to have all this accomplished. Like, things don't work like that. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still achieve anything without like these stupid timelines that we all tend to put on ourselves. And I remember I saw literally a freaking timeline with different years. And he said, look at this. And there was like a glitch in the timeline. Había como, like, there was like a little piquito. And he said, yeah, we gave you a timeline, but something happened in the timeline, so things have changed a little bit. But he's like, but everything we told you, it's gonna happen.
Wow.
And that's when I see like a freaking like a fast freaking recap of everything they had told me the first time about the future. I see everything fast, and he's like, you know it's gonna happen. Like, you, ever since we told you the first time, you've always believed that it's gonna happen, so it's gonna happen, and what's meant for you is for you. So they tell me all of that, and I guess I can say what was the main reason why I wanted to do ayahuasca, right? The second time.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead.
For me to say it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second time, the main reason why I wanted to do ayahuasca was because I got an injury at work and I messed up this arm. So it was hurting so freaking bad to the point that I would rather much not have an arm than to have an arm, of how much it was hurting. And they had me on all these meds and narcotics and whatnot, and like a lot of the pills that they were giving me for the pain, they were like making me not sleep at all. So I was just literally like a freaking walking zombie. And yeah, it would help with the pain, but then at times it was just like it wasn't enough. And I got so desesperada to the point that I was like, you know what, I need to go do ayahuasca because it might heal my pain. Like, honestly, I wasn't expecting for it to go away 100%. I was like, you know, like, if you can do this for me, I greatly appreciate it. Pero si no, pues, it's fine. I understand. And it got healed.
Okay, but talk to us how it got healed, because this is very, very important, and this is just one of the testimonies that I personally have heard. This is the first time that I personally see it with my own eyes, and I know how much pain Chelo had, and from this experience that she's going to mention just confirms that it actually does happen. And I can touch on it afterwards, but walk us through what happened.
Okay, so I saw a bunch of visions that we're going to go into in a little bit. And I remember there was this point that I was like laying down straight and my arms were straight, right? And there was this little being, again, one of the little weird beings. Excuse me. He was like telling me like, oh, this is going to happen, or this is going to this, or this is that. He was giving me like the rundown, right? So he's telling me all of these things. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, I decide to turn to my right arm, because I'm a right-handed, and this is the arm that I messed up. So you guys can imagine, like, I could not do anything with this arm. Everything I had to do was with my left arm, and I'm not a lefty. So all of a sudden, I'm laying straight down with my hands down, and I see a pair of freaking hands working and doing surgery on my freaking arm. And I remember I look to my right, and I see they're like, I can't tell you guys if they're taking out something, putting in something, tying something. They were like going like this. Like, I kept seeing them like do movements, but I couldn't really see what they were doing. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are they doing to my arm? I told the little being. And he's like, like, he kept jumping to something else, to another vision. And then I kept like jumping and seeing that vision. But me, subconsciously, I knew that they were working on my arm. And I remember at one point, the person that was working on my arm, I never can see their face. I'm only able to see their hands. And I don't know if it was a guy or a girl or whatever it was, but I can just see hands working on my arm. And me, subconsciously, I know that they're working on my arm. So this little weird being keeps showing me all these visions. Like, I'm looking at all these visions, but in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, they're doing surgery. And I don't know what the heck they did, but I felt something como que me dolió. And I was like, ouch, that hurt. And I said, aren't you guys going to put me anesthesia on my arm? And they were like, no, we're not. Like, you're fine. You can take it in like that, like without anesthesia. And I was like, what the heck? Like, why are you guys doing that to me? And I remember they clearly said, like, if you think this hurts, we can make you go through what it was to get brain surgery with no freaking anesthesia, and you're gonna know what the real pain is. And at that moment, I was like, all right, you guys do your thing. I'm not gonna say anything anymore. So they kept doing their thing. The being kept showing me visions, and I kept going back to the arm thing because I kept getting distracted, and I kept snapping out of the visions. And somebody freaking called the little being out, and they're like, dude, like literally like, dude, you're not doing your freaking job. Your job is to keep her entertained so we can do our work, and you're not freaking doing it. Like, you better get it together. So then after that, I remember like I went into all these visions, and by that time that I snapped back, my arm was like if it was in a cast, and it was like this now. And I remember I can feel it like warm and like tingling, and I was like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden, like I had to like toss on my, like I was laying down on my belly, and I remember I felt like something very, very cold on the back of my neck. And then I felt they were doing something on my lower back. I don't know what they were doing on my lower back, but I felt them doing something. And then after that, I came back and I was laying down again on my back. And for a good while, I had my arm like this until I was able to like put it back to how it was, like down. But that's how that went with the arm.
That's crazy. But ever since then, do you feel the pain no more at
No.
all? Really?
And the thing is that, I mean, every time I would get medications or I would do different things, it would go away for like a week or two. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I'm better. And then boom, again, my arm freaking hurts.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh my gosh, because originally I injured my wrist. And since they never treated it right, it went from the wrist all the way to the side of my freaking neck. So it wasn't just this. It was just from my neck all the way down to my hand.
Yeah. And that I'm glad you mentioned this whole story because once again, the first time around, the first podcast that we did, that was one of the main reasons why we want to incorporate doing ayahuasca ceremony, I guess, experiences by different people, right? Because all these things is past knowledge from ancient civilizations that we have lost touch with. That, for instance, look at Chelo, that she literally got healed, physically got healed by getting surgery in this dimension that we've lost touch with, right? Like I stated last time, the people that are on top, they don't want this knowledge to be put out there. Why? Because they want people to continue being medicated, right? Like they say out there, like a hospital or doctors out there, it doesn't benefit them by having patients that are perfectly sound and healthy, right? They need people to be sick, right? So that's why they put medications they put people in medications that way they can have a recurring customer over and over, right? But if more and more people are aware of the power of ayahuasca, like Chelo, she healed, right? Now, before Chelo shared her story, I've heard of other people too that have physically been healed, right? Like, for instance, I heard this story that this person had cancer in similar situation. I think from what they mentioned, it was like alien type beings. As crazy as it sounds, they were surrounding this table where the person was laying down, and they extracted a dark ball, right? They extracted this dark ball out of their body, and it was black. And they pretty much, when they were done doing the surgery, they said, "Oh, look, this is all the cancer." And after the ceremony, ayahuasca ceremony, and that surgery that happened in that ceremony, when they got checked into the hospital to do a follow-up, they realized that there was no more cancer.
Damn.
Insane, right?
Insane.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
But you know what? Like, now I feel that I've done ayahuasca and I've had like a different mentality now. I've been a lot into reading more than before. And a lot of the books mention that a lot of these illnesses, like cancer and whatnot, and like everything else, you know, doctors obviously just want to give you a pill because eso nomás es un curita to freaking fix it. But a lot of these diseases come from trapped emotions, which is crazy because I feel like ayahuasca helps you like with all of that. And it's like a lot of these diseases are trapped emotions or trapped trauma.
It's because the thing is, everything's connected. Everything
Yeah.
is connected, right? Obviously, like they say, if you're depressed, you're gonna get sick more faster. That's why when the whole freaking COVID thing happened, and they were telling people to stay inside of homes and just stay secluded from being around other people, guess what? More and more people were getting sick. Why? Because they were getting depressed. They were scared, right? So their vibration was at a lower level. So guess what? You are going to get sick faster.
Yes.
Right? So a quote that I really, really loved, so you guys can put it into perspective as well. Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally lay down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know, it's wrong. What do you think about that, Chelo?
That's true.
Right? Why? Because even when we've mentioned it to other people, they're like, "Oh no, I don't know." Like,
I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm scared, or just I don't know if it's for me. But yet again, they're out there smoking weed, right? They're over there drinking alcohol. They're doing all these types of things that are bad for the body. Smoking cigarettes. They do all of that without no worry, right? Which they know it's harming them. But yet again, when they receive the message that, hey, you know what, this is healing for you, they're like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Right?
I've
Insane. So we wanted to share that. Anything else, Big, that you want to jump into next from your second ceremony?
Do you want me to say about your dad thing?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So the first time that Chelo did the ayahuasca ceremony, we talked about how my dad presented to herself, and then on the second time around, he presented himself again. Right? Okay.
Yeah, he presented himself again, but honestly, I feel like in that realm, once people have passed away, they freaking know everything about you, dude. Like, they know stuff, and I can say this because your dad mentioned something. I'm not going to say it, but he mentioned something very specific from when I was a kid, and I was like, there's no freaking way.
About you?
Yes.
What?
There's no freaking way there's no way you knew that. Especially, we never had a conversation. And that's when it clicked me, like, dude, they all know each other. Because I remember the second time around, Angel's dad came up again, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's him again. So we started talking, and he kind of touched base in things from the first ceremony, and then he told me things to tell Angel again. And I see like this big group of people that I've never seen, and I feel like everybody up there, as the same way that we're all family down here, they're family up there. Like, they all know each other. Like, my passed away grandmothers know, like, your dad knows, like, my side of the family. Like, everybody knows each other. Just how here you're like, oh, like, my parents, like, up there, they know, like, this person and that person. And I feel like, honestly, like, they get a report from us or something, because when your dad said that, I was like, there's no freaking way he knows that.
Did you ever tell me or no?
No, he didn't. I never told you. But I'm not going to say what he told me because I don't like talking about that. But he said something specific that I was like, there's no freaking way that you know that. And so when Angel's dad passed away, this has been a couple years ago, and I feel like I'm going to touch base into something else that I've never told you. But at this point, like I've said in the past, me and my dad have always had a rough relationship, and I feel like now it's been the best that it's ever been, due to a lot of things, or one thing in specific. And we were always like beefing about little things, but what is more crazy is that in this second ayahuasca ceremony, I basically got told, like, dude, you and your dad chocan because you guys are the same. You're like his girl version of him. And I can see that. And, like, me and my dad, like, we were always beefing over, like, little stupid things. And I feel like when Angel's dad passed away, to me, it hit me personally, even though I had never had a relationship with him, it hit me personally because I was like, damn, like I have my dad and I'm not, like, I keep beefing with him for something that was never his fault, and that I just need to drop it already because I still have him with me, and like I'm just wasting our time together. And I feel like at that point, seeing Angel lose his dad hit me in a way that I never, like, seeing Angel lose his dad was like if I felt like I lost my dad. And it made me realize, like, damn, like, you have your dad, dude, and like you can make up your relationship with him, and you're still deciding to beef over something that you need to drop because it wasn't his fault in the first place. So ever since then, your dad's passed away, ever since then, like, I've always put an altar for el Dia de Muertos, and like I've always told this to Angel, like, I do that because a mí me nace, not because like, oh my gosh, it's Angel's dad. Like, to me, I do it because I genuinely feel like I want to put an altar for him. And this time around in my ayahuasca ceremony, we were talking about a lot of things, and Angel's dad said, like, oh, I really appreciate you for putting an altar for me every year. And that's when it, like, guys, literally, they can always see what we're doing, even if we don't physically see them. They're probably right here in the same freaking room, even though we don't see them. And that clicked to me, and I was like, damn, like, they can really see our everyday move. And he told me, like, oh, like, I just want to say thank you for, doing this for me every year. And he said, however, he's like, I'm not the only one that has passed away. And that's when I saw that group of people, and there was a bunch of them. And he's like, you see all of us? And I said, yes. And he said, like, they all basically rely on me because I'm the one that's the most remembered out of all of them. So that's including, like, other family from Angel that's passed away, my family or whatnot. And he said, I'm the one that's the remember the most, so they all rely on me for, like, that specific day. And it's kind of like the whole, like, the Coco movie, when it's like Dia de los Muertos and, like, only the remembered ones, like, come here. That's what I got from it. And he's like, the only thing that I'm gonna ask you for is that from now on, like, just remember that it's just not me. Like, you need to remember everybody else. And next time you do the altar, the only thing that I ask you is to put things that can make you guys remember of all of us as a collective. And that's what he told me.
Man. Freaking insane, babe.
I know.
Yeah. What was the other message that he gave you?
Oh, the other thing that he told me to tell Angel is because he literally said, like, oh, I see. Because at this point, Angel wasn't doing podcasts. He was doing more blogging. And he's like, oh, like, I see how basically Angel's always, like, uploading. And he literally said to YouTube. And I was like, what the heck? And he's like, yeah. And he told me, like, tell him that even though he thinks at times nobody watches him stuff or nothing, like, he has a tribe of people cheering him and clapping for him, even though he can't hear us or see us. There's a freaking mass of people cheering him on and, like, rooting for him, even though he can't see that. And I feel like at times Angel probably feels like, oh my gosh, is this gonna hit? Is this not gonna hit? And he gets discouraged. But you just gotta remember that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then another thing, talking about parents and grandparents, I feel like for me, I remember this second time around, I saw my grandmother, which is my mom's mom. She's still alive. And I remember I saw her, and as soon as I saw her, I started crying. And I'm the oldest one from her grandkids. So I was her first grandkid. And my grandma right now, she's like not in the best health, but she's still here with us. And I remember they told me like, oh, you know, your grandma is always asking for you, which she does. And she's like, they told me like, oh, every time that she asks for you is the moments when she like remembers all the good memories from the past. So you have to pay attention to that, or you have to like spend more time with her, because the moments that she's always like, oh, ¿dónde está la Chelo? ¿Dónde está la Chelo? Or like, where is she? Or this or that, is the moments that she's okay. Like she comes back to reality, because my grandma has dementia. And she's like, oh, you have to keep that in mind. And I remember seeing her, and when I saw her, I felt a lot of pain, and I know a lot of things that she's been through, and I felt that. And I was crying a lot. And I feel like it's just really hard, because I felt the pain that my dad's gone through in the past. I felt the pain from my grandma. I remember since my mom was doing ayahuasca, I kept wanting to see my mom, like her stuff. And I kept seeing a picture of her, like a portrait. And she had a lock.
Of your mom?
Of my mom. And they wouldn't let me see her. They're like, no. Like, as much as I wanted to, and then I would go into other visions and I would try to go back to my mom, I couldn't see her.
So that's crazy. I mean, I know you said it, but that's insane what you just said. So you saw a painting, a portrait of your mom, right? With a lock in front of it.
Yes.
Mind-blowing. Like, you say it so naturally, right? Oh, yes. But this is mind-blowing that you saw a vision that for whatever reason you can't see into her, maybe into her life, into her future. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's really crazy. They never told me why, but I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that maybe my mom, like the relationship between my mom and I has healed, that maybe there's nothing else for me to see. I have no clue. That's the only thing I can think of. And going back to the grandmother thing too, I mean, I think it was last year when my great grandmother passed away, which Angel met her. She was 102. She was in her hundreds already. She was pretty old. And me and Angel went to visit her to the rancho over there in Guadalajara. And I remember that like 2 weeks after that, she passed away. But I never said my goodbyes, and I didn't go to her funeral. So ever since she passed away, I felt bad. And I remember seeing her in ayahuasca. And the first thing I told her when I saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I want to tell you that I'm sorry. I never got to say my goodbyes. Y que no sé qué. And she's like, no, like, I understand. It's okay. Like, I forgive you. You don't have to, like, stress out about that. And then she kind of, like, kept saying, like, stuff about my grandma, that we need to take care of her now. Which my grandma, the one that's still living, which is her daughter. And, yeah. And after my great grandma was having a talk with me, she's like, you know, like, there's a reason why everybody's born the way they're, like, in the order they're born. And numerology means a lot. And she's like, you were born, or you were the first granddaughter for a reason. Like, you were the first grandkid out of 7 for a reason. And then, I remember her, like, she was standing and there was a line of old ladies behind her. Muchas viejitas. I had never seen them. And she was like, you were born to lead. She's like, you're the leader. And we, as in all of us in this line, we chose you to be the first granddaughter for a reason. And she said, she's like, you in this life, you're going to get to do what none of us could in our past lives. And then that's when they also go into, like, basically Angel and I, we're breaking, like, our generational course, and we're starting a new generation. I had told you that.
Really? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So say that again?
So that me and you, we're starting a new generation.
Who told you that?
My grandma. My great grandma. And that, like, after us, it's like a whole new, like, generation. So we're breaking the cycle.
Wow. What do you think that means?
I think we're just breaking the traumas. Or we're finding how to heal ourselves. Because look at everything that we're doing right now with ayahuasca and whatnot before even having kids. Because I feel like the problem in today is like, and I'm not trying to bash anybody, but a lot of people are just like popping kids after kids. But dude, they have so much freaking trauma from being a kid, from this, from that all of that, they pass it down to their kids.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like it's a non-stop little like chain
cycle.
And like a cycle. And honestly, I feel like for me, when I was a kid, I would always tell myself like, oh, if I'm ever a mom, I want to be like this, and this. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes things haven't happened or haven't worked out until I get to that point. Because I remember like I was so hard on myself, and I would always tell myself like, either you're not going to have kids at all, and if you do and you find the right person, you're going to have to be this way in order to become a mom. But yeah, my great grandmother was like, you were born, like we put you in the place that we put you for a reason.
So what do you think it's missing from you?
Doing other work. Like, I feel like, what do you mean I'm missing?
Yeah, because you said that until you're not doing what you're supposed to do, that.
Well, I feel like I always envision myself being a certain way, like physically, mentally, and financially. And I feel like I need to get together with the financial and the physical.
I don't think financial has anything to do with it, to be quite honest.
No?
Mm-mm. I don't think so.
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe kind of I think it has to do with what he just said about, you know, breaking the cycle and getting the new generation, like you said, curing our past traumas to become the best versions of ourselves, right? I don't think financial wise matters, right? Because for me, one of the biggest things is love conquers all, right? Love is the highest vibration, and if you have a place full of love to receive somebody, right, that you're feeling a lot of love, in that place, everything else eventually will come, whether it's the financial aspect, whether it's, you know, the physical aspect. Yeah, but you first have to be in a good state of mind with love, and everything else will come. So that's what I think.
Yeah. What else should we talk?
Let's I think you mentioned about seeing a lot of different people, but then you said last time when you had the vision of your grandpa that took the baby with him, you said that you wanted to tap in to talk to him.
Okay, yes. So like I said, the first time I saw my grandpa, I told you guys that story. He took the baby, and that was pretty much it. I never saw him again on my first journey. This time around, like, these beings, the weird looking beings, they were asking me like, well, like, what do you want to keep seeing? What do you want to keep seeing? And we would jump into different topics, and I saw my dad again. I saw Angel, I saw his dad, I saw my grandmothers. I couldn't see my mom, and I was like, okay, like, let me see my grandpa then. Like, I want to talk to him. And they were like, no, you can't right now. And they're like, choose something else. So I would pick something else, or they would show me something else, and then we would go into a different topic.
Before you proceed, something I want to point out. So Chelo just is talking about these experiences as like, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. However, it's nothing like that. It hasn't been nothing like that for everyone, right? We mentioned it in the past, that other people don't receive any messages, don't receive visions. At times it's very physical. So I just want to reiterate that for some reason, first time around, Chelo was able to ask questions back and forth. Second time around, on her experience, she was able to do the same. What she's just mentioning right now, that she's able to ask, well, I want to look into that. I want to look into this. So I just wanted to put it into perspective that this is Chelo's experience, and not everyone is going to have that experience or that available. I guess being able to do that, to pick and choose. Other people have as well, but this is just so you guys know that don't go in there into your ceremony expecting to, hey, I want to know about this. I want to go with an open heart and open mind to receive what the medicine is going to give you.
Yes, and to add to that, I'm going to mention my mom, because I feel like my mom, she always hears me saying all these things, and that I get to like pick and choose whatever I want to see or do. And I feel like she's always like, oh my gosh, like, how come a mí nunca me pasa eso?
You know what's crazy? Okay, before you say that, you know how you weren't able to see your mom's, future or life or whatever? And then, so Chelo wasn't able to see any of her mom's thing, but what's been your mom's experience on ayahuasca?
Oh, it's been amazing. Like, life-changing.
No. But has she seen visions?
She's seen visions, but she's never had a conversation with anybody. Like, she's never being able to pick and choose. Like, it's kind of like, here, we're going to give you this, and this is everything that you're going to have.
Okay.
But she's never been able to be like me. And she's always been like, oh my gosh, like even my sister's like, dude, like, ¿qué tienes tú que you can do all of this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, I can just do it. I don't know why. Maybe I should ask next time I go, but I know I can just do that. I don't know if it's going to be like that every time.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm able to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to test it. Maybe I'm being serious, just because in the sense that, you know how they told you, hey, well, you're not going to come in here and just do whatever you want, Like, so just always don't feel like entitled once again. And that's kind of the attitude that came across. So I would say just go once again, like I just finished saying, go with an open heart, willing to receive. And if you are able to do that, ask the question. But anything else that you wanted to touch on? Or were you going to
I was going to say about my grandpa, coming off on that
sorry.
So, so they kept saying like, well, like, what do you want to see? Da-da-da-da. And I was like, well, okay, like, you already showed me all of this. I kind of seen this. You gave me a recap on the first time. And then I said like, okay, like, then let me see my grandpa. And over and over and over again throughout the ceremony, I kept asking for him. I kept asking for him over and over and over. And they would be like, no, he can't right now. He can't right now. Ahorita no se puede. Like, we'll try later. And I was like, oh my God, like, why is it taking forever? And I was getting anxious. And it got to this point that I remember there was this huge staircase, and there was some gates at the top of the staircase, and there was a crown, and there was clouds, and it was like sunny. And I seen like the crown was floating. And I remember that the beings kept telling me, like, you see where those gates are? That's where your grandpa is. And I remember like multiple times I went up those, I don't know how many steps, and I went up and I would knock on the little door, on the big doors, and I would ask for him, and they were like, no puedes. And I got so tired of asking. I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember something else that they told me was like, just how, like, how can I say the word? Like, how persistent you are, like, trying to talk to him. That's the same way that you have to be with your goals and your dreams in life. Like, that's how, like, como tanto que estás jode that you want to see him. That's the same way. Like, you need to have the same attitude for your dreams and your goals. And every time, I don't know how many times it went, I don't know how many times it was that I tried talking to him, and I was never able to. And I remember, like, towards the end of the ceremony, I felt that it was coming to an end. And I was like, dude, like, what the heck? Like, I'm just not going to talk to him. And one of the beings was like, okay. He's like, do you remember everything that you and him did when you were a kid? And I kind of remembered things. And I was like, yes. And then I was kind of seeing like pictures of us doing different things. And he's like, okay, well, that's how you're going to be able to see him for right now. And one of the last things that I got told about him was that I was not going to see him in the ceremony because I know I have a lot of questions for him, which I don't even know if he's going to answer. But they told me that eventually for me to see him, it would be like a full-on ceremony, and that they couldn't do that around that time.
Damn, they told you?
Yeah, they told me like, si tú quieres ver a tu abuelito, like it's gonna be a whole, like it's gonna be a lengthy, like the whole ceremony. It's not gonna be like, oh, let me see him for a snippet and then you walk out. Like, no, it's gonna be like a long thing. And that's the last thing they told me. And I remember that when I kept saying that I wanted to talk to him, they kept telling me that he was a very busy person up there. And they're like, oh, like he's the boss up here. Like not anybody can come and talk to him. And I was like, what the heck? Like I'm his granddaughter. What do you mean that like nobody can come and talk to him? And they're like, no, like you need to wait. Like no matter who you are, you need to wait your turn. And they kept telling me that. And yeah, at the end, that's when they were like, no, if you want to really talk to him, you're going to get your time with him. But it's going to be like a full ceremony type of thing.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, mind-blowing, babe. Yeah, just anything else before we close it out, babe? We're already past the hour.
Oh my gosh.
It flew by, right?
I know. And it was like, what time is it?
Yeah. Anything else before we close it out? Any last message to the people? It's something that you forgot, just in general?
Well, I feel like to end the podcast and to end towards the end of the ceremony, that's when I saw the aliens at the end.
Oh, so man, shoot. Is it a long one or no?
I don't know. A little bit.
Yeah. Or say it.
Okay, so at the end of the ceremony, I was coming. I knew that like it was about to be over, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like gonna really not talk to my grandpa. They're like, no, next time. Excuse me. And at the end, I see literally a freaking alien, just like in the cartoons or the movies that have like, you guys know what I'm talking about. I see an alien, and I'm just like looking at this thing, and this thing is talking to me. He's like, oh, like I'm an alien and we're real. And I'm just looking at him and I was like, what the fuck? Like, you guys are real? And he's like, yeah, like you guys can't obviously see us all the time, but we're real. Like we live here. And he said, like, you know, like a lot of the times the government or the higher ups, they think they can see everything and they think they're so ahead of us. And there's many of us. He's like, there's good ones and there's bad ones. But a lot of them, I'm assuming obviously the bad ones, they sell themselves. So they sell information or they'll leak stuff to the government or to the higher ups. So they think that they're like ahead of us. But in reality, like they can't see past a certain time frame. So they think they can see everything, but they can't. And he just said that they were real. And that was pretty much it.
Even more mind-blowing.
Yeah.
and just so we can finish up this, I'm glad you actually brought that up because that was part of your second ceremony. And she has other things from her first and second, but we don't want to say those in specific just because they have to do with our future.
The future.
But for instance, for this about the aliens, something you got to realize is because even the shaman, eventually, if at one point I'm able to have the shaman here, that would be amazing, right? But I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen. However, the shaman and other people's reports, they've encountered seeing aliens in their ceremonies. Why? Because when you're in this ayahuasca ceremony, when you're in this state of vibration that you are able to tap into different dimensions, just like Chelo did, that she was able to communicate with aliens. And even the shaman mentioned that, yeah, he's seen aliens plenty of times while he's doing ceremony. And just like himself, he also received surgery on his knee. Other people that were in the room even told him, I remember this one specific, that one of the guys that was in ceremony, he's like, did I just see a freaking alien here in the room?
Yeah, I
And
remember
he's
you
like,
telling me
yeah,
that.
yeah. He's like, yeah, that was an alien here. And it's just that, and this is, you guys can search it up, right? But Indians that do peyote and all that, they have communication with aliens, right? Because they call them the star people or things like that. And as crazy as it sounds, right? But you really, really tap into another energy source. And you know what? And it's at times, if you have an open mind, this is like truly amazing, and that's all I ask for you guys, just to have an open mind. If you have more curiosity, search it up yourself, right? But just don't close your mind. Always question everything. Always have that a little bit of imagination, that what if this is true, right? Because just like the experiences that Chelo has had, even the ones I have, eventually I want to share mine eventually, because I shared it before I had the podcast. But yeah, just everything that we mentioned here, just have an open mind and just receive it. And if eventually you at one point want to try ayahuasca, like we've talked before, ayahuasca will call you, right? Not necessarily physically, but you'll know when it's time to do it.
You get the sign.
Yeah. Any final message, babe?
Oh, I know. I feel like I said everything.
Yeah, that was good, man. Freaking mind-blowing, babe. Thank you once again. Like I mentioned, I am going to be having other podcasts, not necessarily in specific just of ayahuasca. I have other guests that are going to be coming on. But eventually, the whole ayahuasca topic, I want to have, because I have other friends that I've taken, and they have themselves have amazing stories that I want them to share. Some of them already told me they're willing to share it. So I want to have recurring guests to do ayahuasca episodes. In between, I am going to be having other different types of guests, but I want ayahuasca in general to be part of this podcast, just because we want to put at least a little bit of a grain of our salt, a grain of salt into, opening and exposing this to a larger amount of people. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. But other than that, please subscribe to the channel if you made it this far. This is a small channel that I just literally started at the beginning of the year. So many different people have watched it, which I'm super thankful. But all it takes is to subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing. Give it a like, share it with somebody, leave a comment, because I know that by you guys doing that, you guys are liking the content. And it just motivates me. Like Chelo has mentioned, that I work hard putting all these different clips, this podcast, and just by you guys leaving a simple little comment that'll take you a minute, a couple seconds, will mean the world to me. Subscribe to the channel. Like I always like to say, it's a bigger risk, not taking a risk. Till next time.
Bye.
Follow your dreams. Be in the vibration of love.
Vibrate at the highest. No. I don't know.
All right, until next time.